little bit of a transition here in this presentation. Basically, it's COVID-19 and the national election. Okay. Now, a little bit about me. Okay, this seemed an appropriate spot to provide you with some of my background. I worked my first 4 years in the information technology industry in Baltimore and another 30 plus years in D.C., supporting both corporate and federal agency clients. Entities such as the First National Bank of Maryland, the Marriott Corporation Hotels Division, the Department of Education Student Loan Program, the U.S. Immigration Service, Giant Food Corporation of Maryland, and Blue Cross Blue Shield of D.C. and Maryland. I left my IT career behind in December of 2002 with the purpose of seeing what I might be able to do to help my country. I'm very patriotic. I have been a lifelong observer of national level politics. That is how the U.S. Congress really operates and how the two national parties interact for good, bad, and useless purposes. Further, I've always had a real interest in both domestic and foreign policy. Admittedly, not your typical hobby, but it interests me. Okay? Since leaving the IT industry, I have written and self-published 2 non-fiction political books, 320-page book, Common Interest, which really wasn't the best book, but was my first one, in 2005. And then the 718-page book, The Second Coming of Common Sense, in 2008. As well as several papers on various political topics, including my National Drug Reform Program proposal in 2004. Finally, I must mention that I'm a bit of a futurist, which relates to the climate more than anything else. To me, a futurist is someone that looks objectively many decades down the road and attempts to assess how, for example, the world, society, and the environment will progress or not. Okay? Meaningful reforms such as food and housing and medical care, sea level rise, immigration, and overpopulation require serious actions soon, like now. That is, if we are to have any chance for America and world society to progress and the environment to be preserved. For example, well before the year 2100, 80 years from now, some 22 million Floridians will have to be relocated, because by that time the entire state will be in standing water. That's a start. That's 22 million people. Got to go someplace else. Okay. And another odd point, Mars. If you look at some of the NASA programs on Mars, the surface of Mars is uninhabitable. The only place we could set up any civilization there, a colony, would be in hollowed out old volcanic tubes. So we're not going anywhere else fast, folks, so we got to take care of this planet. Okay, now, most if not all of our national elected leadership cannot see much farther ahead than their next re-election date, and ain't that the truth? They are simply not aggressive problem solvers. High prudent and practical solutions to hard public problems could lead us all to a much better future. Okay. Excuse me. Very simply put, my fellow Americans, because of the wide-ranging incompetence of Trump, America was prevented from having a viable response to the arrival of the COVID-19 coronavirus plague, which hit us in March. You could almost call it the Trump plague. That'd be cute. The direct result are far greater economic pain than required, and more of our loved ones needlessly dying in the past and for the future to come, okay? Months to come. And those excessive deaths will continue for another year, most likely. One death is excessive. Frankly, we did not conduct a viable or real COVID-19 mitigation event, as many European and other nations around the world did to their absolute benefit. Trump limped America into a pseudo-medication, in April, and began badgering Republican state governors to reopen their states too early in May. A total lack of leadership and accountability. Okay. That's why Europe is seeing hundreds. Some countries in Europe are seeing just hundreds of new cases a day, and we're seeing 40,000, 60,000. Just terrible. Anyway, we should have conducted a complete stay-at-home mitigation in the months of April and May, and slowly began to reopen in June as things played out. We could have actually been down to true hotspot tracking and practical contact tracing in June and July. We could have been in much better shape now. Thus, we did not mitigate COVID-19 to control the community spread of the virus. And the daily death count documents Trump's failure. This means, my fellow Americans, that contact tracing is all but a worthless exercise and a ridiculous waste of time and money. As far as I'm concerned, it must be stopped, because it's just a waste. It's everywhere. Why do you have to trace it? You can't trace it. Not well enough for all the money that's being spent. We have too many other things to spend our precious people time and limited budget dollars on. So let's just get real. Due to that gargantuan White House failure, we are doomed to deal with whatever community spread pain that COVID-19 wants to inflict upon our families, and well into 2021. A big thank you to the liar in chief. Therefore, he owns the lives lost so far and all those that are going to come again because of Trump's plague. Our COVID-19 future options, we're living through what I call a grim fairy tale. I believe it is important to point out that the COVID-19 pandemic is a shared national suffering. Like it or not, all 328 million of us are in this pandemic together. We have really not shared any such national hardship since World War II. Which ended in 1945, 75 years ago. We've never had to all suffer anything. 9/11 was 3 locations in the country, and it wasn't, we all felt it. We had sympathy for people, but it wasn't in our own house. This touches everyone. Since our initial COVID-19 response was such a failure in March, April, and May, America has few options for 2020 and 2021. So let's take a look. In mid-July, we find ourselves in an uncontrolled community spread scenario that is washing back and forth across our nation. The CDC announced this week that they expect this fall to be difficult, to say the least, with COVID-19 community spread an ongoing problem, and the annual flu season arriving. God help our poor hospital workers. We are now all hoping and praying for a viable COVID-19 vaccine to be fully developed, ready for production, and the worldwide distribution to some 7.75 billion people as soon as possible. Billion. We got too many people in the world. Let's say it will take 1 year from now, which means July 2021. According to science, we will be very fortunate to hit that time frame. And it would be a bit of a medical miracle if it happens sooner. But then again, miracles do happen. There is one group that is almost ready to start stage 3 testing. Doesn't mean it's going to be successful, but that's way, 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 way ahead of schedule. So if that works out, it might be a Merry Christmas. Of course, it could take longer than a year. No one can tell at this point. Until the vaccine is being pumped into us, there are only 2 options for us to consider, as far as I can see. The ongoing continuation of uncontrolled community spread until it magically disappears, or we finally get a vaccine. That's just what's going to happen. Secondly, should the growing death toll and or the economic pain which we're suffering right now, okay, as things are spiking, become just too great, we could prudently perform a true COVID-19 mitigation for about 60 days and really shut down our economy with a vengeance until we're only looking at random hotspots again. Then, and only then, we could put contact tracing, okay, to a practical use. Right now, we must stop contact tracing, as far as I'm concerned, because it's a terrible waste of time, money, human resource that could be better spent elsewhere. That, folks, is a true picture of our COVID-19 plague that we find ourselves in. Okay. The only things that we can do to improve our daily life from here on in, at least into maybe the next year, is first make everyone wear their damn mask. Okay. Today is July 6th. The other day was July 16th. Okay. The governor of Alabama issued a statewide order that everyone had to wear masks when they were in public, and that's about 30 states do that now. And also that same day, the governor of Georgia, okay, I don't know what kind of drugs he's on, issued a statewide order that no one needed to wear a mask when out in public. Okay? The first decision was medically smart. The second decision was made by a political idiot. Okay? Real men and women, and I do repeat, real men and women, wear whatever they need to wear to protect themselves and everyone they really care about from serious illness and death. Okay? Some people may need to read that about 10 times before it will penetrate their thick skulls. Okay? Okay. And as we talked earlier, we must immediately lower and control the cost of all medical supplies and services until a viable vaccine arrives. If not, and we may need to actually nationalize a few corporations if that's what it takes. And that is all on COVID-19 for now. So wonderful. We won't have to listen to that every day. Now, a little bit political. Okay? We're nearing the end of this. We the people shall dismiss Trump and the Republican Party on November 3rd, 2020. First, a few words about the extreme narcissist Donald J. Dishonest John Trump. Actually, he was, as far as I'm concerned, a 2020 presidential lame duck even before COVID-19 came to America. The Trump plague has only confirmed his presidential and public leadership incompetence and his absolute lack of concern for the literal lives of the American people. He doesn't care. And that includes, all the white supremacists, too. Okay? He only cares about them for votes and donations, not about their parents or their children or their grandchildren. Okay? That he wants to send their children and grandchildren off into public and parochial schools in August. Okay? Yes, that's it, the blunt truth. So he pays lip service, and I have no doubt personally that he is a complete racist. Okay? But he should keep that to himself. And realistically, Trump suckered many people into voting for him in 2016. Okay? And most of them, or many of them, will not be fooled a second time in 2020. In simple fact, he cannot capture as many votes as he did in 2016. Think about it. Okay? Primarily due to the fact that he lost so much of the women's vote. Okay? He also don't have the Hillary haters to vote for him anymore. And part of the disgusted majority that realize he is an active cancer on our sacred democracy will also not be voting for him. Okay? And so he will not have 4 more years. Okay? That's just a definite thing right now. Everybody needs to get out and vote. No one should say, well, maybe Biden isn't doing this for me or that for me. That doesn't matter to him, but you get off your butt and you get registered and you vote on November 3rd. We don't want to have any stupidity again this year. And incidentally, I bet the Secret Service can't wait to walk him and his crazy family right out of the White House and kick him to the curb. I bet you they dream of that every day. And always remember, the Secret Service works for the U.S. Constitution and not for any president. Now about the dysfunctional U.S. Congress. Thus, Trump and the Republican Party, not traditional Republican voters, the party, are finished. We'll be counting the deaths and the wasted taxpayer dollars he has caused long after he is out of office by January. And I say by January for this curious reason. I say by January because once and if Trump accepts that he can't win, he may very well resign from office and have a deal with VP Pence to grant him immediate full pardon. That keeps Trump out of court and out of jail. Think about it. If that doesn't happen before he loses the election, it could well happen before the inauguration. And I can't imagine that he would sit on the platform while Biden is sworn in. His little fragile ego really couldn't handle it. Therefore, my equally disgusted American fellow men and women, we the people will vote this November 3rd to remove Trump Pence, along with Republicans, the 205 House Republicans, and 23 Senate Republicans that are up for election this year. Let's get rid of all that we can. We will also vote to do the same thing to any Republicans running for office at the state and local levels across the country. The once grand old party will be political history. Amen. And as a Christian, I say amen. The plain truth on why Washington and the two parties are so dysfunctional. For starters, the U.S. Congress has a consistent 90% disapproval rating. That is, the negative sum of both parties in our collective minds. It's been like that for years. Meaning that Congress and Washington in general were dysfunctional long before DJ rolled in with his band of criminals he put in the cabinet and his very own swamp creatures. He didn't drain the swamp, he restocked it with his own animals. You may recall that Barack Obama was first elected president in January 2009. A good day. The very next day, Republican Senate leader Mitch McConnell publicly declared that his top goal was to make Obama a one-term president. At least he didn't fail at that. He did fail at that. He just kissed bipartisan cooperation goodbye from the very start. And incidentally, the real problem between the Democrats and Republicans began in 1992, when Bill Clinton robbed or took away George Bush the first's presidency. He's robbed him of a second term, and they've been hacked off at Democrats and the Clintons ever since then, which has been easy to tell. Since that day, going back to Mitch McConnell, since that day through the last 11 years, Mitch the dictator, or also called Moscow Mitch, has blocked practically every publicly beneficial piece of legislation, climate-friendly legislation, and voter system protections legislation, among others. Not to mention he literally stole a Supreme Court nomination from President Obama. Further, increasingly over the past few decades, the Congress has pushed responsibility for problem solving over to the President, which is basically Congress's job by definition is to solve the problems that cannot be solved at the state or local levels. And they basically said, let's figure if we can pass the buck on that. So they passed it to the President, thus expecting the next president, be they man or woman, to just walk in and provide Congress with problem solutions for their consideration. Okay, meaning that someone who's only in office for 4 to 8 years would provide solutions to our problems, while the members of Congress can be in office for decades. And then Trump rolls in with his acute incompetence and his 7-year-old immaturity, and he didn't bring anything with him but problems. Okay. Finally, functionally, Congress's primary function, especially Republicans, over the last few decades, okay, is to maintain the status quo. Right? It's very important. Because the wealthy and big industry are making money off of the way the system is now, okay, and simply want things to be left alone. That's the plain, bold truth, okay. To be clear, for many years now, the publicly failing Republican Party has only served the wealthy and 8 to 10 big industries, is the way I kind of label it. And they don't even try to hide the truth, that truth anymore. They are open about it. They do not care about the masses, you, me, and at least 90% of us, except, of course, when it comes time to raise money, campaign money, and get votes, as in DJ and his pathetic ego-boosting MAGA pep rallies. Okay. Finally, the sold-out Republican members of Congress have freely tied themselves to Trump's twisted agenda. I mean, it's just been terrible to observe, even for Republicans, including their abusive 2017 tax cut. And they have lost whatever was left of their public credibility in those rude performances during Trump's impeachment hearings. Thus, on Election Day, they will pay for their choices and will go out the door with their lying leader, dishonest John Trump. Now, a few words about the Democratic Party. Okay, this is an equal opportunity thing. Excuse me. Get dry doing all this talking. The Democrats' true intention is to help the masses toward having a better life, and that's what they try to do. However, they lack the viable platform that immediately appeals to voters from a real day-to-day problem-solving perspective. Really. Like the biggest problems people have now are housing and food and medical care. They spend too much public airtime pandering after every minority social group that they can find. Okay, that's hard, but the truth is not always easy to hear, but it is still the truth. Democrats appear too often to have forgotten about regular Americans, which includes whites, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, and everyone. There's all types of people, regular Americans. Okay. And in the last several years, the Democrats truly appear to care far more about letting countless illegals into our nation than protecting our national borders. Okay? Appearing to care less about our citizens that are struggling to get by. Okay? And that situation, wanting more illegals in here and not caring enough for the day-to-day struggles of our people is really ticking people and the voters off. Okay? So basically, it's a little bit of a newsflash maybe for Democrats, but America is sick and tired of illegal occupants, is what I call them. What I call them, IOs. Enough is enough. We must be able to have absolute control over our borders. As I stated earlier, I was a consultant for several years in the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service, INS, and I have some practical programs that are required to finally gain control over our borders and manage our citizen and non-citizen populations. Okay? Until COVID-19 is conquered, we will necessarily need to all but seal the U.S.-Mexican border. No exceptions to be made, including political refugees. Enough is enough. All right. Also, they carried the Zika virus up to us, and we have to control our own community spread of COVID-19. We don't need more of it imported from anywhere. Okay? Europe or China. If people in Mexico, Central and South America fear or hate their leadership, okay, that much, then they should replace them, okay? Some 30 years of IOs entering our countries is enough. It's been that long, okay? So much for thinking I'm blindly supporting the Democrats, because I don't. I am a hardcore political independent, and I often refer to the Democratic Party leadership as the Lost Patrol. However, in the end, the Democratic Party's true intention is to help the American people so we can work with them. And once the Republican legislative roadblock is finally removed this year, good things will actually begin to happen. Overall, there must be a full public acknowledgement, okay, that America is now legislatively fighting the economic war between the haves and the have-nots. Let me say that again. We must acknowledge that America is now legislatively and electorally fighting the final battles of the economic war between the haves and the have-nots. Very seriously. And we, the people, have been losing for years. Okay? The terrible wealth and power gap is real and is even being made worse by COVID-19. It is the age-old have-not economic struggle that exists today in every nation in the world. That is the way things work. Okay? Unfortunately. And you need democracy in the Constitution to sort it out. And yes, the haves are currently winning the last 20 years thanks to the devious Republican legislative control of the U.S. Congress. Okay? Finally, as if we needed any more reasons, our last economic straw with them, and was actually the Democratic or the Republican Party's grand prize. Okay? The unnecessary and economically abusive 2017 tax cut for the wealthy and big industries. They got 83% of that cut. Okay? Bernie was right about all this stuff. That tax cut will be reviewed and most likely reversed in 2021. Abusive tax welfare for the wealthy and big industry will soon come to an end in America. And yes, Citizens United will be legislatively corrected. Okay? Make sure I got my monitor here. Okay. My platform is offered to the Democrats and to Joe Biden. Finally, these prudent and practical proposals are offered to presidential candidate Joe Biden and all Democrat and Republican candidates to embrace and promote aggressively to voters between now and Election Day. And for that matter, the entire problem-solving platform of the Independent Party of America, TIPA. Okay? And there's 40 different proposals in that platform already. We will continue the 2020 voter revolution by properly honoring George Floyd's death, and then attack the democratic economic reformation of America. We the people can and will succeed in this noble challenge. Okay? We can do this. Okay? We will join together for the common We will join together as a common people, solving our common problems for the common good of those that we love and otherwise care about, and for the 328 million of our fellow American men, women, and children that you and I shall never, ever meet. And with that I say, may God continue to bless the United States of America. Respectfully yours, A.J. Wilden.